Thanks so much for stopping by. My name is Jax and welcome to my channel. In today's video, we are going to be discussing whether USB 4 is indeed a suitable alternative to Thunderbolt. In a previous video that I did, I discussed whether Thunderbolt is something that you should be considering. If you would like to go and look at that video, you can click on the card above. Let's start by summarizing what some of the main advantages are of Thunderbolt. So both Thunderbolt 3 and 4 support 40 gigabit per second transfer rates, which is insanely fast. Both of these technologies also make use of USB Type-C connectors. That's one of the reasons why many people are confused about what exactly you have in front of you. And as a matter of fact, if you were to just look at the computer and see that port, you wouldn't be sure whether you have USB Type-C or whether that is just USB or whether it is Thunderbolt as well. You would have to actually have a look at the specs of the particular device that you are looking at. Another notable feature of Thunderbolt is that with Thunderbolt 3, it allows for one 4K display, a minimum of one 4K display, and for Thunderbolt 4, a minimum of two 4K displays. Thunderbolt 3 supports PCI Express 3.0, which has a bandwidth of 16 gigabits per second, and Thunderbolt 4 supports PCI Express 4.0, which has a bandwidth of 32 gigabits per second. As of the making of this video, PCI Express 4.0 is now finally available for PC users who have Intel processors. Another notable feature of Thunderbolt 3 and 4 is that it allows for a minimum of 15 watt PC port power for charging your accessories. Both Thunderbolt 3 and 4 also allow for up to 100 watt charging for your thin laptops. So those are some of the main features of Thunderbolt 3 and 4. Some of the features that I think are the most notable, the things that we really would want to know. There's a whole bunch of other things as well. So what does USB 4 offer? Similar to Thunderbolt 3 and 4, USB 4, and this is USB 4, it does provide up to 40 gigabits per second. However, there are two flavors of USB 4. Super Speed 20, which provides 20 gigabits per second, and Super Speed 40, which provides 40 gigabits per second. With regards to the display capabilities of USB 4, USB 4 doesn't have a minimum for 4K display. So it doesn't have to support 4K displays at all. And this is one significant difference between USB 4 and Thunderbolt 3 and 4, where with Thunderbolt 3 you need a minimum of one 4K display. USB 4 does not have this requirement. Also, when it comes to charging your accessories, USB 4 supplies a minimum of 7.5 watts, and that's half of what Thunderbolt 3 and 4 currently support. So looking at these specifications, a hierarchy becomes very clear. Thunderbolt 4 sits at the very top of the food chain, followed by Thunderbolt 3, followed by USB 4, and then USB 3, obviously. Yeah, so as you can see, USB 4 does have the lower level of specs across these three technologies. Another notable improvement that USB 4 provides over USB 3 is that it also provides for tunneling protocols. Now, what does that mean exactly? It allows multiple technologies to be utilized over a single cable. And what that means is that you can use the USB 4 cable to connect a PCI Express device to your laptop or desktop, a monitor, whether that monitor has VGA, DVI, HDMI, DisplayPort, mini DisplayPort, all of those display technologies can now be sent over a USB 4 interface, and then of course you have your USB 4 devices. However, this tunneling capabilities is something that was brought over from USB 4, and this is also, I think, where some people get a little bit confused about whether USB 4 is indeed a separate and different technology from Thunderbolt 3. So USB 4 allows for tunneling, but it is not the same as Thunderbolt, because with Thunderbolt you are guaranteed of being able to connect Thunderbolt devices, USB 4 devices, display devices, and PCI Express devices, and it will be able to do the exact same thing that USB 4 does, however with the guaranteed capability of being able to connect Thunderbolt devices as well. Depending on the version of Thunderbolt that you have, that will determine the types of Thunderbolt devices that you can connect to it. If you have Thunderbolt 3, then obviously Thunderbolt 4 devices possibly won't work. However, if you have Thunderbolt 4, you can then connect all sorts of Thunderbolt devices to it. If you have Thunderbolt 3, you can connect all sorts of Thunderbolt devices, with the exception possibly of Thunderbolt 4, because as far as Thunderbolt 3 is concerned, it doesn't know how to interact with Thunderbolt 4 devices. However, with USB, if your device does not have support for Thunderbolt, then it won't be able to connect to Thunderbolt devices, and you also need to check which ports actually do allow. If your device does support Thunderbolt, you need to be sure of which ports actually do allow for connection to Thunderbolt devices and which ports don't have that capability. So based on all of this, it becomes very clear that Thunderbolt and USB are two very, very different technologies, and the two should never be confused with each other. Yes, they do have similar capabilities. With USB, we now have the ability to connect PCI Express devices, and for those devices to make use of the maximum speeds, dependent on whether the device and your computer has the same level of PCI Express. In other words, if you are connecting a PCI Express 3.0 hard drive, that will be able to make use of the full 16 gigabits per second, provided that your laptop or desktop also has PCI 3.0. If it only has PCI 2.0, then it will work at the slower 8 gigabits per second of PCI 2.0. So that's some of the benefits that tunneling provides that we now as PC users have on USB 4, whereas before this was only possible with Thunderbolt. This is really one of the cool things that USB 4 provides to PC users. There is one thing that I do find very confusing about USB 4, and that is with regards to the cable types. With Thunderbolt 4, you have one cable type that you can use across all of your devices. So if you have a Thunderbolt 4 host, so in other words, if your computer is Thunderbolt 4 enabled, if it has Thunderbolt 4 ports and allows for Thunderbolt 4 connectivity, then you can use a Thunderbolt 4 cable to connect USB 2.0, USB 3.0, USB 3 Gen 2, USB 3 Gen 2x2, Thunderbolt. You can connect everything with that one cable type. And of course, if you are dealing with the older rectangular USB plugs on some of your devices, you need an adapter, but it's one cable that you can use across all of your devices. However, with USB 4, we don't have that luxury. Or at least that's what the documentation indicates. If you have a look at Wikipedia, you'll see that there is the possibility that USB Type-C connectors will now also come in USB 2.0 variant, USB 3 Gen 1, USB 3 Gen 2, USB 3 Gen 2x2, Super Speed 20 and Super Speed 40. So what does that mean in terms of speeds? In terms of speeds, that means USB 2.0 at 480 megabits per second, USB 3 Gen 1 at 5 gigabits per second, USB 3 Gen 2 at 10 gigabits per second, USB 3 Gen 2x2 at 20 gigabits per second, Super Speed 20 at 20 gigabits per second, and Super Speed 40 at 40 gigabits per second. That's 6 different cable types that you would potentially need in the future, that you would potentially need for USB 4. That is a lot of cables. And this is the one advantage that Thunderbolt 4, not Thunderbolt 3, Thunderbolt 4 has over USB 4. And this is also why once the opportunity does present itself, why I would be upgrading to Thunderbolt 4 as opposed to ensuring that I just have USB 4. So the Thunderbolt 4 connects to everything, a universal type of connector, and whereas with USB 4, universal port, but you need all sorts of different cables. So from that perspective, USB 4 doesn't really make sense to me. That is one thing that I wish that the USB implementers forum would have had potentially done a little bit differently, where you have one USB 4 cable and you can use it across all of your devices. That would have been really fantastic, but it is what it is. Having said all that I have, it should become pretty clear that USB 4 is indeed a formidable technology. It does provide a huge amount of functionality, and for most of us, for most PC users, USB 4 is going to be just fine. It will allow us to get really high-speed PCI Express devices, all depending on the type of PCI Express that you have on your computer. That means that you could make use of some really fast drives. It means that you can connect to all sorts of displays. And I mean, yeah, I'm talking about your 4K displays, provided that your computer actually supports it, whether that is a laptop or a desktop. If you've got DVI, which is the older type of display connectors, you've got VGA, the oldest type of display connectors, DisplayPort, HDMI, mini DisplayPort. You can use all of that all over a single USB 4 cable, which I think is pretty cool. And the speeds also are horrendously fast and they are compatible now to Thunderbolt 4, provided that you have Super Speed 40 on your USB 4 connector. So indeed, USB 4 is a viable option. It is a brilliant alternative to Thunderbolt. And if you can afford to get a computer that does have your Thunderbolt 3 or 4 in place on that device, that would be even better, because then you'd be able to make use of the maximum capabilities of the technologies that we have available. So unless you absolutely must have Thunderbolt 3 or 4, USB 4 is a perfect alternative. It is the lower cost alternative of the three, and it is something that I believe that we will begin to see a lot more of on devices moving forward. Alright guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please do consider subscribing and liking the video. If you'd like to talk to me a little bit about what some of the things that I've said, maybe to get some clarity, leave some comments below, and yeah, let's get chatting. Thanks so much for watching guys, and I will catch you in the next episode. Cheers.